Okay, I'm Liz Da Vinci, and I'm here with Fendahlene tonight. I'm with Paul and Ashley, and this is all in connection with Jim's promo and Allied Indies, and we are looking forward to having a chat. So,
Definitely.
so I just was looking at your guys' website, and you've been working together for a long time.
Yeah,
Very long
very,
time.
very long time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Since the 80s, in fact.
really?
Um, yeah, since we went to school together. So we had school bands. We had many school bands with quite crazy names as you do at the time. We won a Battle of the Bands competition when we were 16 in the Arthur C. Clarke Mystery Band. We had other
Cool.
bands at the time, and they were all pretty much covers bands at the time, but we weren't Fendahlene until sort of the 90s.
hmm And how is it that you were in Australia and then you relocated to England? So, what's your nationality?
Well, both for me, it's both. So
Okay.
I wasn't British before, now I live here. I guess I am
Yeah, you should see
British.
the status have just changed incredibly. I'm not British yet because I haven't done the paperwork, but yeah, I'm still Australian.
Okay. Interesting. So, and how do you like it in England?
I love Europe. I love England. I mean, I studied in Germany and Austria for a while before I came over
Yeah.
to London. I mean, it's having a tough time at the moment, Britain, but London is still such an incredible global city. I
Yeah, yeah.
love global cities.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we can be in Europe in like an hour. It's an incredibly good music scene, and even though Paul's quite a way away, I mean, I can really get to him in about an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
it's not that difficult if you really think about it.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So how often do you guys meet up?
Probably every few months, really. It's sort of
Yeah.
it's different to the old days where we used to rehearse, 3 times a week in the studio, and we'd be playing all the time, doing gigs. It's different to that. But
Yeah.
it's interesting these days. You can do a lot more with less. With technology these days, you
That's
can
true.
write a song, record it, and do it remotely, and it's get great results. But I still miss the old days of
Oh yeah,
getting together and jamming and having a full band there and just
Yeah, yeah.
singing songs.
Yeah.
yeah.
But at
We only
least
really
you
do,
can. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, we only really do full band stuff when we go to the studio, and even then, it's sort of a lot of it's production as opposed to playing as a full band. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's that's one thing that I'd actually, to be honest, it used to be a thing in our week where you'd have a rehearsal once a week and probably two gigs.
Yeah.
It kind of was part of your normal routine.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it made you really good musicians at the time. I suppose recording does as well because you kind of lock yourself in a room for 10 hours a few days in a row, and it really sharpens you up. So the more opportunity to do that, the better, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, who knows? Things go in phases. So there may be a time when you rehearse a lot again or whatever. I mean, with Corona, everything sort of went
Oh God, yeah.
mute. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but so did I read you guys have a big backlog of songs? That's what you're working on right now?
yeah. We have,
tons of
it's not
songs.
just COVID songs, but we recorded the album, which I conveniently happen to have here. We
Uh-huh.
recorded this
Yes.
album, which was
Vinyl.
released in 2020, and then
Beautiful.
because we were in different parts of the world, parts of England, we didn't really see each other for a couple of years very much
Yeah.
for various reasons. I guess we just couldn't. I mean, I actually saw Paul the first time when I was picking up something up from his garage, and I could see him from the second story window because that's as close as we were allowed to get to each other.
Yeah.
So, and really during that time, then there was often not a lot of work to do, or you just get quite focused on doing these things. So we wrote an awful lot of songs,
Yeah.
and we probably have more than we can get through. So we're just going through phases of recording bunches at a time,
Yeah, that's
and going
fun.
through that, and obviously new ones as we come along. But we have such a backlog; it's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's great. Productive. And what are some of your favorite bands? I mean, I saw in your description, it's you clearly love lots of music, but if you could narrow it down to a couple.
We probably answer this separately. You want to go with that
Yeah,
first?
exactly.
Slightly different. Slightly different. You want to go
Yeah,
first?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, my five favorite bands would be Beatles, the Stones, the Who, Pearl Jam, maybe Hoodoo Gurus, an Australian band. They're probably the
Yeah.
sort of five bands that are probably the most
Yeah.
influence on me.
Yeah, great.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's like the
Yeah, I
Kinks.
know, I know. There's too much.
Yes, there's too much. There's too much, and I think the older you get, the more well, hopefully, the older I get, I feel the more receptive you are to different sorts of music. If you think, when you're a teenager, you're sort of focused on this is what I like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm into, and this is it,
Yeah.
and you sort of won't do anything else. And now it's much more.
open-minded, and you can find inspiration in different styles and different things that you never could imagine,
Yeah, exactly,
perhaps.
exactly. And it's quite cool too to just to, you know, when you're writing a song to try and say, right, I'm gonna try and write a song like this band. I'll try and do a
Yeah,
song in
yeah,
that style. It never comes out that way. It always comes out like your own song.
exactly. But that's a
Yeah,
fun method that
yeah,
that is.
exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, cool. Yeah, good
Yeah, I mean, I
influences.
think if the influences, I mean, there's obviously, you know, a lot of 90s and noughties rock and in independent alternate rock that we had, but also it's funny because Paul's liked old country for a long time, whereas I'm only growing into it more recently.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think since we've sort of got back into this a few years ago, as Paul's right, we're exposed to so much more music, but with much more open minds, I
Yeah,
suppose. And also, because as you're right, when you grow up, you kind of become a thing. It's like you're a goth or you're a punk or you're this, and then that's what you like. You don't listen to anything else.
yeah.
And I mean, I've been getting into everything. I mean, I've been getting into pop. I've been getting into all versions of things that the good versions, obviously. But I think it's been so broadening
Yeah.
this community and having this exposure. I mean, my favorites are almost the same as Paul's at the top, but I have a very soft spot for Janice,
Hmm.
who I grew up with. I had my 17th birthday. Everybody bought a record for me, and it was like the greatest thing ever.
Oh, cool.
Um, you know, and various other things. I mean, we all have quite broad tastes. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Open-minded. And so do you notice that, or I mean, are there things that you're interested in doing very differently to what you do? Like, are you guys feeling adventurous, or is it more just like you like your style, you like what you're doing, you have a backlog of songs, or are there any wild ideas coming into play?
It's a good question. I think, you know what, I think often wild ideas come into play by accident, and they're often the best things. Like
Yeah.
half the time you do the song, it just comes out sounding like you because you can't help it. That's how it sounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then, like I think for our last song, the big reveal, it's got a bit of a that was kind of a different sort of style for us anyway
Yeah,
to
that's a
begin with.
great song. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you listen to it, there's a sort of a funny keyboard thing in it, sort of an offbeat
Yeah.
keyboard. And that
Yeah.
wasn't planned; that was an accident. So that
Oh
was
yeah, that's
yeah,
cool.
we were sort of doing like it was meant to be like in time with the guitars, and we did a cut and paste and cut it, paste it in the wrong spot.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sounded cool. This
Yeah.
offbeat was cool, so we put that in. So
Yeah,
um,
accidents are good like that.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, sometimes we think, I know Paul probably does the same, that we try to aim to go and write something different. It's sort of out of our comfort zone. And invariably it comes back into our comfort zone
Yeah.
because that's how we tend to do it. So it's a discipline that you're always learning. And I think
Yeah.
we did a little bit of that in the last album. And we've got a couple of songs which I haven't recorded yet, which I believe are quite different for us,
Yeah,
even though they
cool.
probably sound just like us, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But
No,
it
you guys
is,
have a great style. It was actually just a totally spontaneous question that popped
yeah.
into my head, So, but yeah, yeah, cool. Interesting to hear your thoughts. What about so you guys were really young when you even started working together. So you play bass. Do you also
Yeah.
play sometimes guitars or?
Well, I used to play sometimes live because we played a lot of acoustic gigs over the time. It happens when you have a revolving door of drummers over the time.
Right.
So for many stretches, especially when we played live a lot, we'd play a lot of unis and colleges, and we would be a two-piece. So
Yeah.
I'd probably play bass on half the songs and acoustic on the other.
Yeah.
But no, realistically, my specialty is bass. I mean, I
Yeah.
might learn
Cool.
a keyboard part, or I might learn a part on an instrument
Sure.
and bring it in. But no, bass is my thing, I
Yeah,
suppose.
cool. Cool,
Yeah.
cool. And what about you? You sing and play guitars. Do you play other instruments or?
um, yeah, not really. I mean, I played a bit of piano, and I can play the bass, but that's about it.
Yeah. Oh,
Sort of,
that's enough.
that's enough. I mean, I think between us, we can play enough things to get the sound out
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
And that's all you need half the time, just a sound or something. Often it's good to play something you can't actually play very well because
Yeah.
you approach it differently.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
play guitar, I just play guitar the same way all the time. And it's
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
someone, we wrote about 20 years ago, we were writing with this great songwriter called Garth Porter. And he was saying, his advice was write on some, he said, do you play piano? I said, not really. He said, write on piano, write on something different.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
approach
that's
it
true.
differently.
That's what I want to do at some point on guitar too, because I only play one instrument, which is piano.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
but I think it would be fun to, in a way, to try to write like a whole album on guitar
yeah,
that's very primitive even, but
yeah.
it's true. It's you totally think differently, so you shake up your mind and shake up your ideas.
I mean, when I write the bass of a song, which is not that often, but some of them, I will always write that on guitar or on keyboard. from that inspiration, because I'm not a particularly great guitarist, but I'm competent enough to write a song. But I have to think about it while I'm doing it. Whereas if I'm on bass, I can turn off.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So the next thing you're working on is combining some of this backlog into an album. Is that correct?
Well, I think so, but I think the thing is we've probably got too many songs for an album. We must have
A triple album.
Yeah, we could
Oh
do
yeah,
that.
we'd love. Hey, we don't laugh. We've had a double CD. We've had a double album, which I also conveniently happen to have here right now.
Well, look at that. Very nice.
Yeah, I think we have a plan to have. We're actually having a proper release schedule this coming up, which is essentially every 6 weeks without fail. What we did with the first album, or the last album, was because we weren't really familiar with how the new digital world works. In the old days, it was so different that we released the album after the second single, and then all the singles came off the album, but they weren't really new for anybody because the album was out. And then we found ourselves stretching them out longer and longer, so there was lots of gaps. And I don't particularly like how the world works with, say, Spotify, where you have to have material all the time. I don't necessarily believe in that, but the algorithm kind of means you need to do that, and you can sort of see that progressive. It's good for fan bases; they keep getting material. So we're planning, as long as everything goes right, to every 6 weeks for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that's a good plan. That's a good plan, because you can talk about it beforehand and you can talk about it a little afterwards, so there's not too much dead time in between. But I think a little bit of, I mean, for me, to be honest, if I don't feel like being there, then I'm just not going to be there either. You know, you don't have to try to serve the algorithm, and the algorithm also isn't always the same.
I think we released a song before the new song, the last one, which is an alternate version of a song of ours called Glebe Point Road.
Yeah,
which is probably our most best known song from Australia. It was one that got quite a lot of airplay.
Oh, cool.
Got us some really good festival slots, or some really good gigs. And that we had a completely alternate version that we had recorded. That was really good, and we'd never done anything with it. So we have, obviously being around for so long, we have had tons of those things, and we still do. So it's not necessarily that we're going to be putting new stuff out every 6 weeks, but it's just
that doesn't matter.
It's nice to have new stuff out. It's quite positive to actually hear this and go, oh, this is actually quite cool. We should release that. And it doesn't really matter if it takes over the world or not. It's just nice to have out there.
That's right.
Because it's a good song, you know. And I think
you're sharing your stuff. Yeah.
I found that was a really good experience to just put out a song because it's good, not worrying about over promoting it, or God, I've got to ring this radio station. It's just, who cares? Just enjoy it if you like it. And people did. So
yeah, I think that's a great attitude. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you guys have a favorite song?
Oh, God,
sorry, it's a bad question. I'm sorry.
No, that's a really good question.
I mean, there's obviously going to be too many, but just
I could give you a favorite song of ours that not many people have heard. I mean, that might be easier, and it's one that I sang, so I'm going to be biased. There's a really odd song called "Ballad of the Buick Man" that was on an album.
Good title.
25 years ago, and it was an end song. And we talking about experimentation. We wanted to do one of those bombastic album songs you do at the end of an album. And the originally was 9.5 minutes long, or 9 minutes. In the second version, we cut about a minute of it out.
Okay.
And it's got a very long, maybe 3 or 4 minute outro of just noise.
Okay.
And for us, it was quite different. But if you listen to it, it still is us.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Okay, I want to hear it. Is it available to listen to?
It is. It's on the end of the first album. Anyone is anyone.
Okay.
Actually, the CD you picked up before.
The better version is on this one here.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, and that I can.
That's what I prepared earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. A decade of near misses, which is literally, we got to 10 years in Sydney and we'd had lots of near misses, literally, with like booking agents and people in LA, and we just thought, you know, this is classic us. You know, we're either too indie for commercial or too commercial for indie. Let's be a little bit tongue-in-cheek. So we did 26 songs. Only 13 of them were new, with 13 old ones. Thinking, well, most of you haven't bothered listening to us, so here you go. Here's the whole package.
Yeah.
So that's on there with a few others. Have you got one, Paul, from the not so much listened to pile?
Oh gosh. I like all your another one's on that same CD. I like All Your Talk.
Yeah,
that's what it's called. It's a bit of an obscure one that we never played it live. I think we just had it recorded and we put it on that CD because it was one of those songs sitting around that hadn't done nothing with. But I've always liked that one for some reason. It's something
Yeah, cool.
I like the words, I think.
You can't always pinpoint why or what it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, good. What was I gonna ask? Yeah. Can you mention a few favorite albums of other artists? Maybe two super influential albums.
Ash, you go first. I'll have to think
I
about
mean, look, everybody says Pet Sounds, everybody says Revolver. Revolver is incredibly thin. For me, maybe Beggar's Banquet's a bit more influential because it's quite raw.
Yeah.
But then modern things, I mean, I was quite influenced by Electric Warrior by T-Rex for the odd reason that was my first really proper engagement with what I consider a rock star when I came across Mark Bolan when I would have been about 11 or 12. And I saw the thing up on stage. I'm going, oh, wow, that's what I mean. Because I didn't really know other bands at that stage. So I'm kind of obsessed by that. I mean, there's a dozen, 100, maybe 200 Australian indie albums and from Australian bands that nobody's ever heard or have very, very not heard so much. I love as well. I mean, it's a tricky question. It's an endless question. I can throw you out one then. I really like an album. It's actually Paul's that I've actually had in my collection for about 30 years. If he's wondering where it's gone. It's the first Blood, Sweat and Tears album called Child is the Father of the Man, which is a jazz rock album with Al Kooper before Al Kooper left. And I would listen to that religiously. And that was quite jazzy. And I think I borrowed it from Paul when I was in about year 11, and it's sitting about 4 meters away from me. I think he knows where it is, so it's not like it's out of bounds. But that's a particularly left field album that I really love.
Cool. Okay. And Paul, did you think of something, or should I? I'll come back.
I can't think. There's too many. I can't narrow it down.
That's fine with me.
That's a fair question. It's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you guys meet Jim? On Twitter?
Jim contacted me on Twitter. I don't know how. But I think I just got a message from him one day saying, "Hey, I love your music, and I know these artists. Would you like to be involved in this?" But he didn't call it Allied Indies. I think it's just involved in this.
I think that's fairly new. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just went from there. So
cool.
He contacted me. Of course, I'm absolutely happy to share our music and listen to other people's music for sure.
I have a good question for you guys also, because you guys have performed a lot as well, played a lot of gigs. Have you had unusual experiences, or do you have any funny stories, or even just unusual experiences with music like that in your own personal life?
You've got a couple of days. Well, do you want to go? I've got one in my head, but do you want to go? You want to go first?
We've played so many gigs in crazy places, mainly in Australia. We used to play gigs. We would do gigs anywhere. We would travel, do gigs in what they call working man's clubs over here. They call it leagues clubs in Australia. And we used to go there and play, and we'd play to audiences of people playing poker machines and not listening to us and that sort of stuff. And we did get a festival gig once, as Ash mentioned, on the back of Glebe Point Road. It was actually the Glebe Street Fair, so it was a festival in the street that we'd written the song about. Okay, and that was a great gig. But it was what was quite funny was that we were the support act for a dinosaur. So I think the dinosaur from the Wiggles. So if you've heard of the Wiggles, they had this dinosaur it's a kids show, and that was the act immediately after us. So it was kind of surreal. It was kind of
Did
cool.
we know that at the time?
Playing the gig, but
very interesting.
Did we know that at the time? Because I remember at the front there was a lot of mums or dads with little kids. Do you remember that? And the little kids are doing what little kids do at front and dancing.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, why are all these little kids coming up to watch it? I didn't realize at the time, I think. The example I was going to give was we supported a band. Oasis were going to tour Australia in 1998, I think. And they pulled out because they're Oasis and they do those sort of things. So a local band got together and called themselves No Oasis and did the whole pitch. They were the pretend Oasis band. So it was good. We got quite a good venue to play with, and we were the support act, and we got the full rider and everything, which was quite rare for us, at least in the smaller venues.
Yeah. And
then they come backstage and they're completely normal people. We knew them, well, one of them. Then they got dressed, and then about 5 minutes later, the fake Noel and the fake Liam started arguing. Like, it was just weird. It's almost like they went into character. Like they put the wigs on, and suddenly they became Gallagher's.
Yeah.
And then they went on stage and they were just being assholes to the crowd. I mean, they were great, but it was just exactly what you expect. It was like the weirdest thing. It was like, I compare that to seeing cheering at an ABBA hologram. It's like, it was just weird, you know? But,
Okay,
yeah.
this is a good story. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, I mean, we could wrap it up, I think. I feel like I definitely learned a lot about you guys. You want to talk any more about, feel free to say anything you like about Fendahlene or about, you are going to start gigging again. You mentioned that one time online. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did have a gig in 2021, and I think what we've been trying to do is work out the best way for us to do that. As I mentioned, we're separated by
Yeah.
about 90 minutes,
Yeah,
2 hours on a bad day, and we have been offered a few gigs. But I mean, funnily, one of the problems here is there's quite a lot of sketchy operators that will offer you a gig, and then what they'll do is they say you can't promote any other gigs. You have
Okay.
to have an embargo, and you have to guarantee crowd, and it's like
Oh,
you
awful.
run a mile from those people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because the first rule is if you've got 10 gigs, it makes you more interesting. So people are more likely to go if they know you're playing multiple gigs.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had an offer with that guy last year. I thought, no, I just can't be bothered doing that. So,
No.
I mean, I think we wanted to get to a point where we're getting this new music cycle going, and then we'll think about that. But as Paul sort of said before, I mean, we're open to anything, to be honest. I'd happily play a Sunday afternoon at the back of a pub or in a coffee shop or at just a, children's fair. I don't care. I mean, we just like playing.
Yeah, that's the thing. I can understand that totally. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, then I would say thanks so much for your time. It's been great to sort of meet. It's definitely much better than Twitter or Instagram. So yeah, I'm glad I had a chance to talk to you guys. And thanks so much to Jim. We give a shout out to Jim and to Ollie.
Thank you, Jim.
And also, everybody should go check out Fendahlene and their songs and watch out for things every 6 weeks. They got vinyl.
We have vinyl.